Welcome to the Next Level Podcast, powered by San Manuel, a series connecting you with the best minds in casino, hospitality, tribal government, and beyond. Enjoy the show.
Kristy Neick, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good, Kyle. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to have you on. I'm excited to chop it up about your career and insights learned. Kristy is the director of sales at Cox Media. I have so many questions in the landscape of change as it relates to media, but we can get all to that. But I think it's always helpful to start with the origin story. So if you wouldn't mind, connect the dots for our audience of, the 3-minute, what we must know about Kristy as far as where you grew up, kind of early interests, and career stops, and what we must need to know from like a 3-minute perspective, your origin story, as we call it.
Sounds good. All right. Well, born and raised in Arizona. My dad's from Arizona. My dad's family's from Arizona. Lived here my whole life. Haven't left. Don't plan on it. Eventually, I might, but I just love it here. It's been a great place to grow up and then raise my family, and just Arizona native at heart. So I think my origin story that's fascinating is up until like in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do for a living. And of course, maybe you don't need to know in high school, but I was on a board, like a junior board for March of Dimes. And one of the board members was a meteorologist here in the market. And I swear within 5 minutes of meeting him, I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be an anchor, a reporter, a meteorologist. And I don't know what it was that he did or said, but I knew at that very moment, that's what I wanted to do. Then ASU has like the best broadcast journalism school. And so it was natural just to go there. And that's kind of what got me into my career. Then I was, it's called NATIS, National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. I was in a club for NATIS at ASU. And we toured all the TV stations. And I literally like brought my resume with me. Secretly, I didn't tell any of like the other students. And as we toured all the stations, I would bring my resume, and secretly whoever I talked to would be like, hey, if you're hiring, I would love to work here. So I ended up ABC 15, which is a station here in the market. They were like, actually, we're hiring for someone part-time, which was so perfect because I was in college and 20 years old at the time. And I got it. So I went back the next week for an interview or two, got the job. So when I was at ASU, I also got to work my career like dream at a TV station. And so I was 20, started there. Then I became a promotion producer, which I didn't even know what that was. But as I graduated, I became a promotion producer. It's like when you write, coming up tonight at 10 p.m. If you those kind of things, teasing why you should be watching the news. I was a writer, and then I would edit. And then I think probably a year into it, I was like, I'm not sure that this is my calling. I love the job, but it doesn't come natural to me like it does the people around me. And what they could come up with in 5 seconds, it took me like 30 minutes to come up with. I'm a hard worker, so I pushed through it. But I then saw some people upstairs and in the building I worked in, they were in sales. And I didn't know what sales was for television. I had no idea, never even heard of it, never thought of myself as a salesperson. I wanted to be on air and started exploring what that was. I actually knew someone, many people in the department, and a couple of them at the time, they had left and gone to Cox Media, and they told me how great the job was. They explained to me what the position was. And so I ended up interviewing at Cox Media, got hired as a very, very rookie salesperson, and was selling at the time, 20 years ago almost, TV commercials. So if you're a business, I'm selling TV commercials on HGTV, ESPN, TNT, you name it. And that's where I got started in it. Then I did that for a long time, probably 10 years, built my way up, built a list, because I was all new business, just cold calling, and I liked it, but it was nice to build a list. And then I was ready for something different. So I became local sales manager at Cox Media. A couple of years into that, I saw an opportunity at a station across the street to be director of sales, went for the job. So that was at 3TV and KPH, so KPHO and KTVK. And I got the job as director of sales, was there for 3.5 years, loved what I did there, and was able to boomerang back to Cox Media as director of sales. And I've been here now for about 3 years. So now I lead the sales team here in Phoenix and in Tucson. And now our job is so much bigger. It's selling TV commercials, but it's also selling everything OTT, social, search, you name it, anything to kind of get your business name out there and get leads and business for your company.
There's a lot there that I wrote down that I want to come back to. But you said something there. I never thought of myself as a salesperson. So connect the dots with me, because I always, when interviewing people, usually the people who become really good at sales, there was some kind of breadcrumbs early on, right? Maybe they had like kind of like an entrepreneur spirit. They did lemonade stands, or they were kind of selling in ways they didn't know. So I want to double click on that a little bit, because that's fascinating. With your title now is saying that line, I never thought of myself as a salesperson. So I guess my question is, was that skill set already there, or did you literally just grit yourself to kind of learn that skill set? Talk to us a little bit about that foundation of sales. And looking back, do you see any things that's like, aha, maybe I actually did have that kind of internal set of skills that maybe I'm just not giving myself credit for? Just take that question where you want.
Thank you. Well, I think when I thought of sales, I thought of being, at a car dealership and selling a car on a car lot, maybe. Salesy, you just sell and you move on to the next. You sell, you move on to the next. That still to this day would not be me. I would not fit there. What I didn't know about this career is it's about relationships and people. And so I don't have all that many hobbies in my life, but you know what it is? Relationships and people drive me. I love helping people. I love working with people. People fuel me. I'm an extrovert. I love just being out there talking to people. And then I love knowing that whatever we've done has helped their business. So I would still stand by, if you would have told me at 16 years old, I'd be the director of sales, or I'd be a salesperson any time in my life, I wouldn't believe you. But it's about this relationship sales. So a certain type of sales, yes. And this is about people and relationships. And yes, there's a lot more of the other sales that goes along with it. But when the foundation is relationships driving client business, then I absolutely love it. It was made for me.
And you said cold calling. So, and then this is just kind of a nerdy question that I have, but like, what's the art and science, or maybe you just have to have thick skin, but if you're literally calling someone cold, what tips do you have on, because I think you're right. It's 100% about relationships. But if I don't have a baseline relationship, most people probably, when they pick up that phone or they have that interaction, are just like, tuned out. What have you learned along your career as it relates to, making the most out of an opportunity, even if it's a cold call, to build that connection when immediately you're kind of up against some friction from the get-go?
Yeah, it's thick skin for sure. And knowing that you're going to get a bunch of rejection before you get a yes, but knowing that yes is, 20 more calls away, you're going to get to it. But now I would say tips for anyone getting into sales, you go to ChatGPT, you do all the research you can on the business, on the person, you LinkedIn them beforehand. There's other tips that you can just not be quite so cold calling. It's a little bit more warm calling. You come up with a script. If you don't have one, you talk about businesses that are in a similar business. Hey, we helped business X grow by X percentage when they advertise with us. I'd love to talk to you more. Do you have time Tuesday at 2 that we can talk more about it? Okay, pique their interest versus the cold call, or like the LinkedIn things that I get so many people selling things on LinkedIn that have nothing to do with my scope of business, nothing to do with anything that I would be interested in. So making sure you're doing the research to the right people. And yeah, it's like ChatGPT or Copilot, type in some things you want to talk about and get their interest, and it'll come up with scripts for you. So nowadays it's so much easier and people are interested. And if you kind of LinkedIn before, start kind of that relationship a little bit, or text or call or whatever. There's a lot of different ways to kind of break through and not be quite so cold call. But yes, you have to have thick skin, because in the end, there's going to be a lot of people that might just hang up on you, and a lot of cold email, a lot of cold LinkedIn. That I would recommend that too, because I'm not so great at stopping into places. I can be kind of awkward at first. I'm like, oh, I don't like this, but I can do a lot better via email or phone call or LinkedIn.
Gotcha. And Kristy, I actually want to jump back to March of Dimes, that meteorologist you met.
Yeah.
I guess, because I think this is important for this platform. What was that early spark, or what was it back then that you saw that was kind of your first career journey of, this is what I want to do? Take us back to that interaction, and what specifically was it that drew your curiosity to at least kind of explore that first chapter of your career?
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea. And in high school, we would do quizzes on what you should be when you grow up, and none of them none of them resonated with me. So I don't know, and I'll give him the credit. His name is Steve McLaughlin. Still, I got to work with him at the last station too. So that was a wonderful full circle moment. But he was passionate about what he did. I loved the fact that, I mean, it was exciting. I wanted to be on air, but it was educating. It was helping the community. It was telling great stories. I loved writing. I loved English. I loved English lit. Like I loved all of that, that this made sense. For the first time, I was like, oh, this takes all my passions that I want and combines it into one. Ironically, that wouldn't be what I went into. It led me into where I'm at now, which is funny because closed doors sometimes are the best things that could happen. But at the time, you couldn't have told me I wouldn't be an anchor or meteorologist or reporter. But there was something about him and his passion for his job and just realizing that my skill sets aligned and my excitement around that aligned with what he was doing.
And, you know, I think within your career journey, what's probably not in your origin story is obstacles or challenges that from a career standpoint either made you reflect, pivot, you know, so broad question here, but when you think about, you know, the career that you've had so far, is there anything that maybe on the surface was a setback, but maybe in hindsight actually helped you from a career standpoint? Because I think that's important if we're trying to, you know, help people go to that next level. Part of that next level is having some resistance. So for you, if you wouldn't mind sharing, is there an obstacle or a setback maybe that you had in your career that really, in hindsight, was kind of a blessing?
Yeah, it's so funny. I feel like a little embarrassed to tell this story, but I'll tell it. When I was at ABC 15, I'd probably been there for a year. I made it pretty known, like I want to be on air. I want to, and Phoenix is a large market. We're the 11th largest market, so it's hard to break into on air there. But I let it be known to the people around me. And one day, this girl that I went to college with, and keep in mind at the time I was in college, they brought her in and they put her behind the anchor desk and they started doing teleprompter and started rolling and recording her. And I was like, wait, that never happened with me. Why does she get to do that? And I was really like dream killing is the way I would say I felt at the time. But why I feel embarrassed about it is what I should have done. And the Kristy now would handle it so differently. Be like, hey, how do I get that opportunity? Hey, what can I do to, and I didn't. Instead, I was like, oh man, should I be thinking about other things? Maybe this isn't for me. I don't want to move to a smaller market. I really love it here. And my brain, I'm an overthinker anyways. And it's not that I gave up on it, but I started looking at other opportunities. And then, like I was talking about upstairs, those people upstairs, they were working normal business hours, 8 to 5, where if you're, if you're on air, you're working anything. And I was working the evening shift at the time. I got to live in Arizona if I, in a sales job or whatever. So it just opened doors. So that was like a door that felt like it shut on me. It didn't shut. I allowed it to shut. Again, the Kristy nowadays would do something so different. But I think it led me to exactly where I wanted to be. And I didn't even know it at the time.
And also I want to double click on that because I think pivots are a really important discussion. So looking back, obviously you said it was the right decision, but for people listening out there, when it's time to make a career pivot to another vertical or upstairs or maybe into sales or whatever their specific situation may be, what advice would you give on that end if someone is contemplating making a jump to a different vertical, different sector, different position that might be a little uncomfortable? Looking back, any guidance when you have to weigh a decision like that?
Yeah, I think when you need to make a pivot, like deep down inside, at least you kind of, And when I go back to that first job, when I said I was a promotion producer, and I would look at the people around me and go, gosh, they are doing this so much quicker than me. They just get it. And I'm not, it's not flowing for me the same way. I loved it. Like I said, I was a hard worker. So I did it well, but not as easily as they did it. I knew at that point, like I needed to pivot. I needed to do something different and I didn't know what it was. And that's when I started, and what I would really say, networking and getting to know. I just went around and, the TV station at the time, and I met with programming, I met with research, I met with master control, I met with all the different departments, met with sales to figure out what they do. And maybe within my environment, there was something I could pivot to, which I did. Or if it's a different industry or whatever, I think, you have kind of that tug that tells you, all right, this has run its course. I'm ready for something different and new. And then network and use whoever you have. Everyone needs an advocate. Everyone needs mentors. Everyone needs mentees. I don't know where I would be without advocates and mentors. And people are so willing to give you their time, talk to you, give you advice. It's surprising actually how many people are so kind to just talk to you and give you advice about where to go next.
And networking and mentoring, I'm curious to know, is there someone, and you don't have to say a name if you don't want to, but when you think about advice that has really helped you throughout your career, in this mentor category, what's maybe the best piece of advice, maybe not the best piece of advice, but maybe something that's resonated with you, that's carried you throughout your career? What would that advice be?
There's multiple mentors that I've had that maybe have been in my life for 25 years. I will still call or text me like, can we meet for coffee? I need your advice. I really want to talk about something. I trust them completely and know that they trust me back. And that's just something I hope to tell them thank you a lot, right? Because they've really been so meaningful in my career. But the piece of advice, I think something that's been interesting lately is, a lot of times things are going, especially younger in your career, things are going super right for you. And your path is like this. You're like, okay, got that job, building. Recently, someone had said, that's not always the case. Whether it's a setback, whether it's a merger, whether it's a change, there's a lot of changes that can happen. Don't think that your career is always going to be like this. There's going to be some of this. And sometimes it's the best thing that can happen to you to really go, oh, hang on, let me evaluate, let me see where I'm at, and let me see what really makes the most sense with those setbacks. And just, I don't know, I have a vision of where I want to be. I'm such a goal person. I'm always looking to the future. I always have been like that. Well, sometimes it's not like this, and it feels like it should be because it was like that at the beginning of your career or whatever. And all of a sudden something gets thrown your way and you're like, oh, that's not what I expected. That's not what I thought was going to happen. But yet sometimes a setback will set you up in the best possible way for your future. You just don't see it at the time.
So if I had to, now that we've got a sense of your early career and some key stops, if I had to ask you the question, the key to my success and the key that's got me to where I am today, in its simplest form, is blank. How would you finish that sentence?
Hard work.
Oof. I know that sounds self-explanatory, but could you elaborate on that a little bit?
This will give you more than the words, but I think that my work ethic, I will work hard or harder, as hard as I possibly can to achieve. I am an achiever. I want to achieve. What I lead with is passion for people, kind of like what I said, relationships and people drive me. So I'm constantly just trying to make sure I have a pulse on everything around me, the people around me. I think you're only as good as your boss, your boss believes in you or things like that. So it's constantly trying to create this culture, people first culture, and yet work really, really hard. And I'm not saying you have to work nonstop, but as a newer person, when I was newer to sales, I was probably the first person here and the last one to leave because I was going to achieve and learn as much as I could. I'm not saying you have to do ridiculous hours. I'm just saying making sure that you work really, really hard and that no one can ever question your work ethic. You're always on time. You always show up with good energy and passion and excited to be there. And if you feel like that's starting to go, then maybe that's when you talk about a pivot. You look for something else. But really, I would say hard work.
So you mentioned hard work. I'm also getting the sense of, I go back to that story you said of you were somebody who brought the resume with you when you knew you were going to be, around people that you're interested in and maybe they can offer you a job. So I'm also getting this sense of preparation, and maybe that's naturally something. So I guess my question is, where did these skill sets come from? Did you maybe have someone, when you were younger that you saw as far as a model of hard work, or this sense of grit and being prepared? Where does that come from?
That's a good question. So my sister, she's my mentor in life, and she's someone I always really look up to. She and we had, parents that didn't make a lot of money and that always worked so hard. And I looked like, when you didn't know that money was going to make it, you figured out a way to eat. You figure out a way, like for all the things I could watch my mom just be so scrappy and do. We would have literally very little money to make it to the next paycheck, and she'd figure it out, and we would just work hard. So there was never an option of not working hard. And I say my sister because she's the exact same way, if not more so. So there's nothing specific I would say that happened, but we were both the exact same way. And we just work so hard. And she's great. She called me this weekend for advice. I call her all the time, and we come from the same place. And I think one of those things that if you were to ask me a pet peeve, it's someone who doesn't work hard. It's someone who doesn't try hard, when I'm like, that's all it takes. Just that's the basic entry into working really hard. But I would say my family growing up, it wasn't super easy, and they always made it work. My mom, my dad always figured it out, and my sister helping. That's where it would come from.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your expertise, because you mentioned change there too. Like when I think, because I lived in Arizona for roughly 30 years, I was a Cox customer, right? So when I thought of Cox, I only thought of cable, right? And every year trying to call Cox and finagle my way into a cheaper. So that was kind of my experience with Cox. But obviously the landscape, as you mentioned, has changed. And you mentioned now it's so much more. It's obviously you're still trying to pitch the advertising for television, but television now is so different than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. You mentioned digital, social. So broad question, change as it relates to when you first got into your career of what you're doing now in your time at Cox versus now. Paint the picture of that gap of kind of what was success in sales back then and how you have adjusted and adapted to continue to add value and continue to thrive there at Cox. Just speak a little bit about that change because it's really fascinating.
It's so completely different. If you think, let's go 20, 25 years ago, maybe you had cable that was kind of on the rise. Maybe you just had the main broadcast TV stations, and the way you consumed media was completely different. Now you're watching TV, scrolling on your phone, looking at your Instagram and TikTok, whatever it is, and you're inundated by messages all the time. How do you cut through that? So back, I say it's the good old days. Man, we sold commercials on, like I said, HGTV and ESPN and TNT, and it was easy because there wasn't a lot of consumer options of where they were getting, their information. Today, it's all about attribution. It's all about who saw my commercial, how they're reacting, what's happening, how are my sales. It was always about sales, but it was easier to pinpoint that. Now it's so fragmented. There are so many people in this space, and you really have to cut through the clutter and figure out, business owners too, like exactly who you're going after, exactly who your customer is, and how you can reach them. Because now there's a million ways to reach them, where before there was 6. So the landscape has changed so tremendously, and I can't even imagine what we'll be saying in 10 years from now.
And you said something I wanted to spin off on, which is measurement. There's so much measurement as it relates to media and advertising, but part of, I think the goal is to sift through the white noise and what's actually impactful measurement versus what are, you can look at actual reach versus potential reach. And, I could nerd out on this conversation, but, actually I'll provide a practical example. I think it was me and my dad or somebody was debating. There's kind of two sides of late night. When I say late night, like Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, a lot of people will say, well, those are dead, right? The ratings are so bad. But if you speak to people on that camp, they're like, to your point, it's just different the way you measurement. Sure, the traditional linear might be down from a ratings perspective, but if you look at their YouTube clips and social and everything else, they're watching, it's just not as easy to measure, right? Because it's 6 different resources, so to speak, to kind of quantify, well, is it down? Is it better? Is it worse? So my question to you is tips as it relates to change and, adapting to that change. And then also too, being able to effectively measure when everything just seems so new and everything seems like it's changing all the time. I don't know if you have an answer, but that's kind of where my head's at. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so many. I'm passionate about it. So if you think about the funnel, right? Let's go like this. You've got top of the funnel and bottom of the funnel. And a lot of times what gets credit is bottom of the funnel. So if they Google it, that gets the credit. But to your point, you were watching Jimmy Fallon and you saw a commercial for something, and then you did something else and you saw a billboard and you heard a radio commercial, and then you did a follow-up action with it, right? I think, we will hear a lot of times, newspaper is dead. But is it? Because there's still people that are reading the newspaper. And if you have the right audience that you're looking to target, and they have the newspaper, a magazine, cable television, sometimes you'll get advertisers that go, I only want to be on Netflix. great. We can do that. That's not a problem. But let's not think about it in that way. And it's really that funnel, because so much of it, this top of the funnel, doesn't get the credit for that advertiser, even though they needed all of that to play into it. I just think there's a place for almost all of it. And then you got to be real careful on narrowing down to something so specific, because you could be missing a lot of that audience that you should be reaching. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I imagine with kind of your body of work, you've worked with tons of different clients, and some have been effective and some have not. So my question to you would be, what do you notice? Because you're 100% right. It's so noisy, right? It's much harder to capture someone's attention, I think, in a 2025 environment versus 20, 30, 40 years ago. But it could still be done. And you mentioned all these different places now that brands can kind of play. I guess compare and contrast from your perspective, the brands or the partners who really do a good job of kind of navigating this new landscape versus maybe the ones that don't, right? Because I think your perspective on this is unique.
What I love about this job, what I love about this company and this industry is consultative sales. So really understanding what an advertiser is looking for and really helping lead them to that. But when you say campaigns that do and don't work, well, sure, there's someone that, they want to be on, they might sign a year commitment or a 3-month commitment, but after 10 days, they're like, this isn't working. This isn't working. You can't be that reactive. There's a lot that goes into it. And I use the analogy, just say you went to a doctor, because there's so often, say you go to a doctor and they're like, here's what you need to do to get better. Here's the medicine you need to take. And here's the path that I'm going to tell you to go on. And you're like, okay, I kind of like that. I don't like that. And I'm not doing that. And then you go back, you're like, why aren't I feeling better? Well, did you do these 3 things? No. So I think a lot of times people will come to us and say, kind of my example, I want to be on Netflix. And that might be the exact answer. But really, we've got to consult. What are you looking for? Who are you looking for? And how can we best reach them? And that's kind of the doctor analogy. Here's what we would recommend. Here's the length of campaign. Here's what you can expect as far as results go. And then know that, I've been doing this for 25 years. I promise you, we know what we're talking about. And we've seen success with other industries, with your competitors, et cetera. So really being open to that, the expert. And as long as your expert is consultative, understands exactly what they're doing, they're prescriptive, and they can get you those leads. But yeah, or someone that's like, oh, didn't work, 10 days later, I'm canceling. That's not how it works. It's not going to work in 10 days. You do have you have to give it some time. And the biggest thing I say to advertisers is the more you can share with us, the better. There shouldn't be any secrets. There should be, because everything we can know that's a pain point or a place for improvement or something you're doing really well can help make this campaign so much more successful.
Yeah. I love so many things that you said there. And I think going back to your funnel example of, I'll keep it simple. Top of the funnel is just awareness. Bottom of the funnel is conversion and loyalty. I think so often as marketers and advertisers, to your point, you're really focused on the bottom. That top part's really hard.
Yes.
And it takes time, to your point. And if you're looking for shortcuts and band-aids, you're going to have a hard time building brand equity if you don't really have a long-term view. And it's kind of like anything in life with investing, or if you want to get healthy, sure, you can go work out or run, but you're not going to see immediate results. It only comes time after time and believing and trying your best. I think that applies to everything, and especially in the context of our conversation here. And I wanted to ask, so Kristy, I didn't tell you this, but we have a segment here called The Bigger Picture, where I show a picture and we just kind of riff. It could be a quote, it could be an article, it could be a picture. So this is what I got. You talked about earlier doing some research. So I did a little bit of research quickly on your LinkedIn. What I noticed from posts you've done is a lot of activity there at Cox. So my question is culture. I think that's important. You've been at Cox. So for those listeners out there, I guess my first question would be, one, how would you define the culture there at Cox and you as a leader in the team there? And then 2, any tips on, building a sustainable and an effective culture where people want to show up to work, and be their best self? So broad question, but, what are your thoughts on the culture you have there? And then 2, any tips to really building a successful culture?
Yeah, this picture makes me smile because that is who I am at the core, like I said, people, relationships, but culture. Listen, we spend so much time at work, so much time, and you have so many other options. And there might be another company that pays better, or another company that does whatever better. But in the end, the trust of the people around you, knowing that someone trusts you to do your best job or will guide you, mentor you, culture. So we call it people first culture. So really is a people first culture. If we take care of you as a human and your needs, and there's trust throughout the entire building here, then you'll work hard, you'll want to stay, and you'll want to be part of this for the future. Like I said, there can be other companies offering other perks. That's okay. And if that's what you want, you're like, okay, I'll make more money there. Then you should go there. That's okay. But in the end, it's all about people. And I want to know that my people trust me, that I trust people, the leaders I work with and peers and the people that I manage. And I think it's just people first. Culture matters in the biggest possible way.
On that front, people first culture, is there a tangible example, or maybe compare and contrast, what that may look like compared to one that might not be a people first? Any tips for new leaders, or leaders who really think they got a people first culture, maybe want to drive to be a people first culture? Any tangible tips on what that looks like?
I have the perfect example, and I'm going to anonymize this a little, but I trying to think of how to anonymize this. I had an emergency with my son not too long ago, and he had to go to the emergency room. He was super sick. I had this massive meeting, massive. I mean, think about those meetings you cannot miss no matter what. Couldn't miss it. I ran into my boss, kind of had tears in my eyes, like, hey, I've got to go, but I know I have this meeting. Meeting's only an hour. My husband's got my son. We're okay. I'm going to take this meeting and then I'm running out right away. And he was like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're going straight to the emergency room. I got you covered. No questions asked. And like pushed me out the door. That to me tells people first, because there was a similar time on the opposite side that you don't say anything, you run out and take your son and take care of it. I'm trying to, again, anonymize this, but my boss then texted me, no need to respond, just making sure your son is okay. Next morning, everything okay? Take as much time as you need, make sure he's good. That's kind of an extreme example, but on the other end, it was not checking in on your son, not like the meeting I missed was massive, but it didn't matter because your family is what matters. Family first. And that's proof right there. That wasn't an easy meeting for him to step in and take, but he didn't care. He did it. And I think that's just a big example. There's a million of those, but that's a big one. I always know if you have a doctor appointment or something that comes up, not a problem. Again, it goes back to culture and trust. I understand that, you've got to get this taken care of, and you will, and you'll work to get whatever you need to get done. But right now, take care of your family and what matters the most.
I love that example. And, that's hard to do, right? For high performers, and understood that, like, obviously family does come first on that instance, but even times where as high performers or good functioning teams, you should give yourself, that space for grace, so to speak. But we all struggle with it, right? Like, oh my goodness, I can't let the team down. So to be able to have leaders who basically kick you out the door and say, no, you're not coming in, I think that goes a long way, don't you think?
It does a really long way, because I wasn't kicking myself out of the door, even though I should have. I should have dropped everything and went. I wanted to stay and check that box and do what I needed to do. Kick me out the door. Thought that was awesome.
Yeah, 100%. And then plus it builds so much greater loyalty to when you do come back, whenever you do have to step out because of personal reasons. And also it sets the culture of we'll figure it out, right? Even in circumstances where it's like they played a key piece on this project or whatever it may be, like we'll figure it out. And we always do, right? But I love that example. And it looks like, side note, it looks like this is Topgolf. Do I got that right? Is that where y'all are at here?
That is Topgolf. Good job.
Yeah. How do you play at Topgolf?
Terribly. I'm terrible, right? I'm good, but it's really fun though. What you had mentioned earlier, we do a lot of these team building. It can just be. It could be a happy hour, it could be Topgolf, whatever it is. It could be chamber events. There's a variety of things that we do as a group, but this always helps. Just, block out 2 hours in your afternoon and we're going to go do something to celebrate our team. And we're very good at doing that and celebrating each other, both on personal relationships and professional.
Yeah. And that's another key piece too, right? Is like being able to let your guard down, And sometimes on the surface, it's like, oh, we got the offsite thing, or we got to go do the team member thing. But I think net, most time people are like, you know what? It's important to drop our work self down and just to be able to connect, right? So these kind of things go a long way.
Yeah, we do community service in our boardroom a lot. So we'll do, just an hour of doing something for some kind of community service. And that alone, we'll bring in lunch and just do something like that. But that just really bonds the team and helps us know we're here for a bigger purpose and we're giving back. And it might be an hour at lunch. It's an easy thing to do. We'll set it up months in advance and do it together. And it feels really good.
So Kristy, when we think about the future, we think about 5-10 years out, what gets you the most excited, or what puts pep in your step as you think about your career and going forward in the next 5 to 10 years? What kind of gives you the energy as you look forward, so to speak?
I think for this industry that I've chosen to make a career in is that I have no idea. Like I said, I'm such a planned person, and I always have the next step, I think, in my head figured out. I don't at all. I don't know what it's going to look like in 5 years. I don't know what it's going to look like in 10 years. I know where we need to lean in. So a little bit of the unknown, because I like to be like a little control freak a little bit. But we don't know. I don't think we could have predicted where it is now, all the fragmentation and viewership and everything else. So a little bit of the unknown makes it exciting to be on the tip of whatever is changing, wherever AI is already all over our business, in every business, I guess, but I'm excited to lean into that more, even though I don't know what that looks like.
And I'm gonna do a question I haven't done in a while called the time machine game. So we're gonna go back 10 years. So let's go back to 2015, June. If I were to ask Kristy back then, looking back, I guess, let me rephrase this question. Going back 10 years, knowing what you know now, the thing we underestimated the most in 2015, right? Knowing what you know in 2025, 10 years later, what was the thing we underestimated the most between that time period, essentially 2015 to 2025? What do you think it is?
Two answers, and one is not what you're asking, but let me go personally on myself. I think I underestimated myself because I always had goals and dreams and thoughts, but I would be my own biggest critic to kind of like hold myself down or go, hey, can I do that? Am I worthy? Can I continue to progress? And I'm so excited that I hope I would have bet on myself. I believe I would have, but I was always my biggest critic, and that feels exciting to me. As far as what I would say, the internet. I don't mean that just goes like it's just everything that has come from our industry, viewing habits, however you're viewing your media, all the different places. I would have said digital is really, really important, but at the time, television was 10 years ago completely different than what it is today, and I knew it was a big deal, everything going on in the digital world, but I didn't know how incredibly quickly it would change all of this landscape. I should have, but I don't think I knew quite to that extent of what it would do to everything in this industry.
Now we're going to go the other way. So me and you are going to hop on a pod. Well, maybe it's something different, but for this for this purpose, we'll say it's a podcast in 2035. Kristy, we're chopping it up, and I asked the same question 10 years ago. In 2025, the thing we underestimated the most was blank. How do you think Kristy in 2035 would answer that question?
AI. I don't know that we're underestimating it, but AI and what it's going to do to so many jobs, so many touches. I think we're going to be shocked by all the things that happen in the next 10 years with AI.
And you've mentioned that a few times. So I'm curious, how are you preparing yourself? I'm getting the sense that maybe you kind of dabble with it, try to understand it. But what advice would you have as, you're predicting, and a lot of people are, right? The AI is going to be so much more powerful than people even think. And even those who are thinking about it, it's going to be more powerful than that. So what are your tips, or kind of how are you preparing yourself for that potential change that's here and around the corner?
I mean, there's some really, I'm going to give you some basic examples right now of what's happening in our industry, but whether it's a TV commercial, right? You can literally do that all in AI now, and that has been for a few years. If it's a search campaign, you used to need to come up with all these search terms for a client. Now AI can help do all of that. Let's go basic. Copilot that I use. Sometimes I get emotional and I get frustrated, and I want to write an email that is real to the point, maybe not as nice as I need to be. I put it in Copilot and say, please make this nicer, but to the point. So yes, you're right. I'm dabbling at this point, but it has helped me communicate so much better. I talked about using it for cold calling. So I am just doing the basics of it. I'd love to dive deeper into it because I'm such a believer, but I think it can, I'll write an email that I think is pretty darn good. I put it through Copilot and it's way better. So it's just those basic things. Nowadays, there's no reason for a mean email unless you intend it. Because you can run everything through it and make it kinder, but to the point. And then I would never take what it spits out initially, but then you customize it and make it better and make it more professional, whichever which way. So I don't know. I'm on Copilot 50 times a week. Like I'm on it a lot, but I haven't delved really deep into AI.
And one last question, and thank you for taking the time. I have a few more questions here, a little more quick in nature, but I guess successful team. I showed you that picture earlier, but it relates to hiring and bringing on new people. And I think it's important for this platform and this podcast. What tips would you give for somebody who is thinking about coming and working for Kristy, or is thinking about, entering this space, knowing what you've known and seeing like the trends of what I'll call successful people, or people who really like their positions versus those who, turn sour, just, weren't a good fit. Tips on people interviewing, and what are the kind of things that you look for?
Wildly passionate about hiring and recruiting, and I would say it's a lot of what I do, especially now with the landscape being so different than it used to be, say 5-10 years ago. And if you interview with us, I'll tell you it'll take 3 months for you to even get hired if you're going to get hired, because it's like we definitely take our time. But if you're someone looking for a job, let me recommend so highly LinkedIn. I would be all over LinkedIn. Tell your story, connect with the people that you are interested in, connect with people that you want to work for or with. I had a college student a couple of years ago reach out to me and say, hey, could I get on your calendar? I just want 15 minutes of your time. I want career advice. Never met him before, gave him 15 minutes of my time. Happy to I was like, good for you for asking, right? Because he doesn't know who I am. He just reached out and we did, and it was a great conversation. So I would say, don't be afraid to ask, be all over LinkedIn. Can I give you a giant tip? When you interview, yes, it's okay to send a follow-up email, a thank you for your time for interviewing me. I'm interested in the job, because the amount of times you don't get that are surprising. But if you if there is a place to handwrite a card and mail it and send it to someone, I can't tell you, that will happen once a year maybe, and that will go a really long way. So it's those little things that you're doing that will really go a long way. But please make sure to thank someone for their time, because I promise you the person interviewing you is probably in back-to-back meetings, very busy, as you are too. But I would say do the extra little things that will make you stand out. And maybe if you're meeting somewhere at a Starbucks just for a face-to-face interview or something like that, confirm before you go. Just over communicate in the process, and and always do a thank you. But I would say start with LinkedIn. It's a really powerful tool for recruiting and recruitment.
Yeah, and absolutely everyone's doing their research, right? So if you're somebody who's a finalist, you better believe that it's just the way the world is. They are looking on the internet and LinkedIn and seeing what people are saying and what you say about yourself, right? So definitely it's low hanging fruit and something that people should take advantage of. And my HR partner, human resources partner, reminded me it was a correction, right? Not to use the term red flag, but yellow flags, right? Something that's like, right? So what are some things maybe that you see as yellow flags in that interviewing process, or someone who might be a new team member for your team, yellow flags to watch out for?
Thank you for asking. I love that question. Someone who shows up to the interview, you've maybe been talking to here, they've met with your recruiter first, and they meet with you. They don't know what you do. They come and they go, okay, so if I'm selling internet to Cox customers, you're like, that's not what we do. Okay, if I'm selling cable to Cox, that's not what we do. So making sure there's enough information about every company out there that you don't need to go in there cold. I cannot tell you how many times someone comes up and they're pretty vetted, but asking a dumb question, that's okay. You can ask questions and say, hey, I don't think I quite understand, and clarify questions, but you need to show up. If you get an interview, you need to show up having done full research of that company and understanding what they do, because the amount of times there's that confusion. And again, with Cox Communications, you don't know about Cox Media, probably. You know about the bigger Cox Communications, the way that you had talked about. But if you're applying for a job at Cox Media, make sure you know the ins and outs, and also do your research on who you're talking to. I love what you pulled up, the team picture of me. That's my passion. People. Do you see what I post? A lot about people and team and culture. That's what drives me. So you can, tailor some questions around that as well, knowing that that's that person's passion that's interviewing you.
Yeah, being prepared, and I'm getting that sense from you, is part of your success, but also for anybody hiring. Like, I'm surprised how often, especially for director, senior manager level positions, we'll bring people in, and sometimes they're not from immediate area, so we'll put them in a hotel close by. The amount of times people don't visit the property, don't spend any time on our website, social, right? Like, easy layups of, I just want your opinion, right? Just to show some initiative of, I'm interested and here's what I think. And maybe I don't have all the answers, but this is my thoughts and my expertise. And right, how many people miss that is kind of surprising. And then also too, what you spoke about, understanding what your differentiation points are. Like, what are you passionate about? What gets you out of bed? What gets you energized? But then also too, not to beat yourself up, but also, when you ask the question, and then you're going to get it at some point, what's the weakness, or what's the something that you can improve upon? When people are like, I don't know, or, I care too much, like, like that's an important piece too. And it's not to be self-deprecating or to beat yourself up, but it is important for whoever your supervisor is going to be to understand, like, hey, this is where I need some development. Here's my non-negotiables. So having that piece, I think, is big too, don't you think?
I totally think so. Again, two things I want to say on that. I think the first one is, speaking of AI, right? Go to AI or ChatGPT, go and ask about the company, and you're about to interview. You could put the role in there and say, what questions should I ask, or what should I know about this company? So, 5 years ago, this didn't exist, but now it does. The second one, and it just came to my mind, but recently I met with a business coach, and he said to me, what is the one thing that you need to work on? So if you were to get the question, what's the weakness? What's your weakness? Or what's something you need to work on? He said to me, what's the one thing that your peers and your leader would tell you need to work on? And I was like, I think I know. In my own head, I think I know what that is, but I'm not sure what they would say. So I came back and told them all, hey, I'm going to set up a meeting with all of you. I don't want it right now in the room with everyone, but individually, if you could all come back to me with one thing that I could do better, one thing that I could improve, please, anything goes. I just want to know what that one thing is that I can improve. So I have 2 meetings left, but it's been so great to set that up and go to those meetings and say, okay, what's the one thing? And it is aligning with what I thought it was, but I still have a couple more meetings. So I would encourage that too. I hadn't thought of that. I don't know why it took me till now, and those meetings are happening. So that's been good.
I love that advice. I think I heard the phrase, you can't read the label from inside the bottle, right? So getting opinions from others, even though sometimes it's kind of hard, right? No one likes to hear, hey, you're actually not good at this. And actually to have that relationship, be honest with me. Like, what is the thing that I can improve upon, or maybe I'm misunderstood on? And to have people give you that honest feedback really goes a long ways, because perception for me, I'll just give a personal one. Like, the way I am a little more introverted. So when I take things, I kind of internalize them, but my face looks very angry. Oh. So I could be in meeting situations or walking down the hall. And also it's not natural for me to do all the small talk. So you combine that, and sometimes it's like you're standoffish, you kind of do this. And that took some work of getting input from others and just kind of collecting the breadcrumbs of, oh, okay, like, I need to say good morning, good afternoon, ask about the weekend, and that's been huge. But if I didn't get that feedback and wasn't observant, I'd still kind of be in that chamber, and I still got work to do. But I think what you're hitting on is key, is like really asking people, what is it? And that really helps, because we all have gaps. We all have blind spots. Kristy, thank you for the time. I have a couple final questions here, quick in nature. So let's go the other side, on the personal side. It feels like you're a very driven individual. how do you disconnect, or how do you, from the personal side, kind of disconnect so that you can be, driven at work and all the things that you do?
I have 2 teenage boys, a husband, and a high energy dog. And I have 2 phones. I have a work phone and I have a personal phone. And I had to get this work phone so I can put it away for the weekends and even at night, like I'll work later and then I put my phone down. If I had it coming on my personal phone, if I had all my work email, I would never disconnect. I know that about myself. So I keep those phones very separate. And that's what helps me. And if I have time, because I'm waiting at a baseball game for our kids to start playing or something, then I could check some work email. If not, I leave it at home intentionally and I separate myself. So I would say for me, it's just basic, but that would be the best. Like I have to regulate or I might not stop working. So it's very intentional.
And any hobbies on that front with the family that you like to do, or maybe that you like to do solo?
Yeah. I'm a water person, but like the lake is my happy place. So I love, just being on water on a boat. I'm a giant water skier, which I think no one is these days, but I love water skiing and I've got special tricks that I absolutely love on like to show off in front of my kids. But outside of that, I have girls trips that I like to go on and just everything with my boys, watching them play sports and being present, whatever we're doing is my happy place.
And you mentioned the 2 phones thing, and I get in the sense of separating. But any advice to parents out there as you've navigated a successful career, being a mom and having 2 kids? What are some maybe things that you would give to someone who's just starting? Maybe they're just starting to build their family and they're saying to themselves, at least for me, it's personal decision, right? But for those who are, I look at Kristy, she's the director, she's had a successful career, but also it seems like she keeps family the priority and family first. So any tips on that end? Because I think that's important as you navigate your career and family.
I was very blessed at the beginning of my sales career to be able to be a job share. So my general manager at the time allowed me to be a job share, which meant I had a partner that worked 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I worked Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We split commission and I was able to be home with my kids when they were babies. And that was such a great thing. I'm saying embarrassingly, realized after a while, I didn't thrive when I was home those days. It was better. I am a better full-time working mom, knowing that I cut off at night. We have dinner together every night. That quality time that I spend with my family is more quality now than it was when I was a job share. But I was so lucky to find that out on my own. And also now I would just say, yes, the 2 phones is really important to me, but really being present with your family when you're there, not having your phone and distractions, not, just being present with them, because we're all replaceable. I do have great work ethic, but I also know that something happens to me tomorrow, someone else has this job. So make sure to prioritize your family and know how that works best for you, because family, friends are everything. So just making sure you know that good balance.
Absolutely. Are you a reader? Are you a book reader?
I'm an audibler.
Okay. So that works. What recommendations or what books, it could be recently, but actually let's give it to the context of this. We're talking about next level careers. What's a book maybe you'd gift somebody, who's trying to figure out their career and trying to advance? What book recommendation would you give on that front as a development book?
I have a couple. So I'm such a podcaster too. So anything Simon Sinek, I love his approach. Some of the things he says are so basic and like, oh man, I knew that, but I needed to be reminded. But he's such a people first leader. I love Brene Brown. She's everything vulnerability. I feel like there's a superpower in vulnerability, authenticity, and she talks to it. And sometimes we want to hide behind that and not admit weaknesses or embarrassing moments or things that we've been through, but that stuff you grow so much for. And then the book recently that I just love so much was the Mel Robbins Let Them theory, the Let Them theory, I think. And I think because I want to control things and I don't know, have my hands in things. This is like, okay, let them. It's about letting go of control and letting someone do what they're going to do and controlling your response to that. That's really good. And then one more, the 4 agreements, which also kind of goes into that. So can't remember what they are, but I will come up with them. The 4 agreements, I think that's such a great one. And one of them is don't take anything personally. And that reminds me a little bit of the let them theory as well. People are doing things for whatever reasons, let them. Don't take things personally. Those would be my recommendations.
Oh man, I want to read that Mel Robbins book because I'm a podcast nerd, kind of like you. And one of the things she was talking about that concept of let them, but the second piece she says that a lot of people miss is now let me, right? Like it's one to have that energy and that grace to just let them, but there's also a conscious decision that you have to do, right? Is be able to respond rather than react. So I definitely want to read that book. And I love that you said Brene Brown. One of my favorite videos from her. It's actually the reason why you can't see it, but I have the Man in the Arena quote behind me, because she talks about that Teddy Roosevelt quote and essentially breaking it down like that essentially is everything that vulnerability is. And also too, like if you're in the cheap seats, like I don't want to hear it. Right. And I advise that to my team. If you're listening to opinions and noises of people who really don't, their opinion really doesn't matter, right? They're not in the arena. They're not really right. So like, I really highly recommend it for those listening. It's just about 3.5 minute speech she does. It's really powerful. Last two questions for you here. A favorite quote that you have?
Oh, it's on my LinkedIn. So it's Maya Angelou. I'm going to say it wrong, but people, they don't remember what you say, but they remember how you treated them. I just butchered that quote, but I think it's such a big thing. When we were talking about cold calling at the beginning, I had a manager when I was a rookie salesperson. And I would feel defeated. Like I'd get hung up on, I would get, rude. People were rude because they don't want to hear from the salesperson. And I would walk into his office, and to this day, I don't know what he said to me, but he would build me up. And I would walk out being like, I got this. And I would cold call some more and get rejected. And then I'd get a win. But whatever he did, I don't know what he said to me, and I always remind him, like, gosh, I want you to know how powerful your words were to me, because they made me truly believe in myself when I felt so down. And then I could go out and conquer the world, right? I felt like I could really do that because of the way that he treated me. And I just think it's a real big deal.
Absolutely. Amazing quote. Kristy, I'm going to get you out on the final question we ask everybody. And thank you again for taking the time. This has been really insightful and really helpful for our audience. But if we had to summarize it to 3 tips from your vantage point of, hey, here's the 3 tips I provide if you wanted to take your career to the next level, what would those 3 tips be for you?
The first one I'm going to say is work ethic. Work really hard. Oh man, this is a tough one. I would say always have a mentor or an advocate, and have someone that's going to be very truthful with you and tell you what your blind spots are and all the things that maybe you don't and do want to hear. Make sure you have someone, a very trusted partner. One of the things I look for in hiring is stay out of the gossip, stay out of the negativity. So I'm just going to flip that and say, have a good attitude, have a can-do attitude, want to show up every day, be there with optimism, and a good attitude will take you a really, really, really long way.
Yeah, those are awesome tips. Kristy, Director of Sales at Cox Media, thank you for taking the time. This was so great. But yeah, thanks for taking an hour. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Check out more episodes at thenextlevelcareers.com.